Welcome to Alcorn Immigration Laws webinar today. After the H-1B lottery, what are the next steps? So thank you so much for joining. My name is Sophie Alcorn. I'm the founding partner of Alcorn Immigration Law, and I'm a TechCrunch contributor. I write the immigration advice column called Dear Sophie. I'm also the host of the Immigration Law for Tech Startups podcast. And it's really a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I see some familiar names, some clients, friends. So thank you so much for joining me and spending this hour together. And you can ask questions absolutely throughout, and I will also reserve time at the end to answer them. So just a little bit about us. Some of you know this already, but our mission at my firm is to really overcome borders and help people reach access to new types of opportunity. We want to connect everybody in the world together, have it be one world where people can go where they want to follow their dreams. And we do this out of Silicon Valley with compassion and creativity and really the highest standards of immigration legal services that we can provide so that we can support our clients to help make the world a better place through their businesses and by reuniting families. So very exciting, and whatever your immigration needs are for business or family immigration, we've totally got you covered. Our team is international. We're growing. We're one of the fastest growing immigration law firms, and everybody we hire has a personal connection to immigration. My dad was an immigration lawyer. My mom is an immigrant from Germany. And each of us who engages in this work has a personal conviction that this is what we want to do, to have meaning and impact. So we're all very glad to support our clients. And we're just also proud of our success rate. Our firm was conceived and born in the twilight hours of the Obama administration, but really grew during the Trump administration, which had a lot of dark times for immigrants. And even in that environment, we were able to succeed almost all the time for our clients. And I'm really proud of that. And I'm just so happy for everybody we represent that, it's a new day, a new dawn, a new administration, and things are rapidly improving for immigrants who want to come to the United States and companies that want to sponsor them. And also exciting news. I just want to brag. I got officially chosen to be a mentor at 500 Startups, one of the leading global startup accelerator programs. So super excited to be able to support our clients with resources from the 500 network now. All right. So let's just put this all into perspective with an immigration overview. For those of you who have heard my webinars before, you're familiar with some of these concepts, but basically the H-1B is a visa. It is a temporary non-immigrant status to come to the United States. Getting a green card for permanent residence, either through the adjustment of status process or through getting an immigrant visa at a consulate abroad, is another totally different category of US immigration law status that people can receive. You do not have to have a visa to qualify for a green card, although many people who have visas do get sponsored for green cards. And if somebody wants to become a citizen of the United States one day, they definitely have to become a green card holder first, usually, unless they were weird exceptions, born to an American in another country, or parents became citizens when they were kids, or et cetera, et cetera. But most people in the business immigration environment need to get green cards first. And the most common journey that people go on, and why you're all here thinking about the H-1B lottery at this time of year and what to do if it doesn't work out for you, or what to do if you do get selected, just how to navigate the system from here. So a lot of people applying for as the beneficiaries of companies that are petitioning H-1Bs. A lot of those individuals have made their journey to the United States as F1 international students. Maybe they had CPT for a summer job or 1 year of OPT after they graduated. If they studied in a STEM field, they would get an additional 2-year work permit called STEM OPT. And now we're at this point in that journey, the H-1B lottery, and submissions for that are closing today. And the next step of the journey, assuming one crosses this valley or maybe hurdle, depending on how you want to describe it, or we find a workaround additional path, which we'll talk about today. The next step after this would be a green card usually. So that's where we're located on this map of the theoretical journey. And just a little bit of these basics about the H-1B, because I mean, we vetted all of our clients whose names we put into the lottery, and we just finished all of that a day ahead of time. So I'm really excited about that. And we're still waiting to hear the results. We should get all the results within a week from the date of recording this webinar by April 1st, 2021. And just, you know, procedurally speaking, being selected in the lottery is not an approval for an H-1B. It simply gives you the right to petition, apply for an H-1B. So yes, you've gotten through some initial steps of creating a business profile and identifying your candidates, but there are still many things that will need to be proven. Like, is the job that you're offering this person actually meeting the government definition of a specialty occupation? Like, for example, does this role require a bachelor's degree in a specific field? And does your candidate have a bachelor's degree in that field? And are you going to be able to pay this individual the prevailing wage, which depends on where they are going to be working and their level of experience and the job code that is selected for the role. So that's some context for the next steps for people who are selected. Those will be the types of things that your legal team will be proving to the government to get the H-1B approved. So basically, you might have a few more hours. I don't know the exact end cutoff time, but H-1B lottery registration has ended. So congratulations to everybody who navigated the system and got their candidates in. And, oh, here we go. Yeah, it's over. It ended 3 hours ago. So we are now just waiting. And you can see here, USCIS intends to notify registrants and their representatives with selected registrations via their USCIS online accounts no later than March 31st, 2021. So what does that actually mean? That means that the first 85,000 people petitions that got, or registrations, there's 65,000 for people from anywhere in the world with any level of education. There's an additional 20,000 set aside for people with US advanced degrees, masters or PhDs. So 85,000 people will get selected within the next week. You're going to get a notification in your online portal, and it's either going to tell you that the person was selected, or it's going to tell you something like that it's pending, or it's going to tell you that it was rejected or denied. And the reason it would be rejected or denied is if you put in 2 registrations at the same company for the same person. So hopefully you didn't do that. And otherwise, you either get to pass, as in the Monopoly game, pass go, collect $200, or you're just going to hang out in this waiting room area until July, when it will be determined if all of the 85,000 H-1B slots have been used and how many more slots can be released to additional people who registered and who are waiting. So if you don't get selected by April 1st, don't freak out. There's still a possibility that you could get selected But if your OPT is going to be ending, or your other status is going to be ending, or you want to start thinking about backup plans for candidates, it would be the time to do it in April, for sure. So what to do if you were selected? Please contact us. We would be delighted to support you. We will automatically proceed with representing all of our clients who we registered, who get selected. So we will be contacting you about that. And we are also open to accepting more H-1B petitions from companies that would like to work with us starting in April to submit the full H-1B petition. Now, typically, we're looking at a 90-day window deadline. So I believe that date will be June 30th, might be June 29th. Not exactly sure off the top of my head. We'll figure it out for you. But it's basically all of the H-1Bs need to be filed by the end of June to avoid losing that chance of being selected. So please keep that in mind. If you're selected and you don't have an attorney yet, please call us April 1st or April 2nd, because we need to know immediately who we need to have capacity to support over Q2. And then I also just want to call special attention to any beneficiaries who need a special status called CAP-GAP. If you've been attending our prior webinars, and I know that several of you have, you've heard us talk about this. So CAP-GAP is something that matters to people who are in their final year of OPT status. So either the last year of STEM OPT, or if you don't qualify for STEM OPT, the end of your regular OPT. And what the CAP-GAP rule says is that if your OPT ends sometime between April and October 1st, if the company's H-1B petition is received by USCIS for that person before the end of their work permit, not their 60-day F1 grace period, but their actual work permit EAD card, employment authorization document expiration date, that they are allowed to continue living in the United States and working at the company that sponsored them for the H-1B up until the H-1B start date of October 1st, 2021. So we have some candidates whose work permits expire in May. So what that means is as a concrete example is since this individual's work permit expires May 15th, we will need to expedite her case if she was not selected in the lottery and make sure that USCIS receives the full petition by May 15th. And we cannot use the full 90 days that they typically offer to file that H-1B request. So for anybody who needs CAP-GAP, please be highly aware that their deadlines may be different, and April 1st is the earliest date that a H-1B petition may be filed. Most people hired us to do the electronic registration only. So that means that we will go through a multi-week process of preparing the labor condition application and the other pieces of the H-1B petition. So most of those H-1Bs will not be submitted until May or June unless there's a special reason to expedite. All right, so that is what to do if you were selected. Now, actually, I'm going to go back to that because I want to talk about travel for a few minutes, because we're still in COVID times, and this is still, it's important to think about. So if somebody's in the United States and has legal status through CAP-GAP or OPT or some other way to stay here until October 1st, and there's no urgent need for travel, please just stay in the United States. It is so much easier. And if you leave, I don't know when you're going to be able to get a visa interview to come back in. So stay if you can. And then for companies who have sponsored people that are outside of the United States right now, that's okay. It is currently challenging to schedule an H-1B visa interview for somebody in another country. That is a necessary step to this process. It would happen after USCIS makes their decision on the petition. So let's just set realistic expectations that we're not sure if those people are going to be able to enter the United States by October 1st. You might want to consider, if they're outside of the US and you need them to work for your company sooner, if you're not already doing so, working with an international PEO to employ them outside of the United States and do contract work for you legally. That is certainly an option. But we just need everybody's flexibility over the next year or so, as the US consulates are still wrapping up capacity to hire visa interviews, to hire enough consular officers and diplomats on staff to conduct visa interviews. And it remains to be seen how long booking those appointments will take. But it is still possible with some focus and attention and creative strategy, but just the timing is not guaranteed right now. But the H-1B is for 3 years, and there's also this important thing called recapture, where typically the H-1B maxes out after 6 years, but if you've been gone outside of the US during that 6-year time period, you're allowed to tack on the days out when you were outside of the US to the end of the 6 years and recapture them to be able to stay in the US for a full 6 years of working. So that time is preserved and used for the future. All right, so let's keep going. The next topic I'd like to cover is, okay, what is the plan B? So what if your candidate or you are not selected in the H-1B lottery? What happens next? Good news, there are lots of things that you can do, and there are many strategies. Many are, we pride ourselves on the creativity of them, and we're able to use them to find alternative ways so that people can live and work in the United States for many people. So excited to share those with you. All right, so one of the things that I'm very excited about, that we've talked a little bit about on prior recent webinars, but not too much, and I'd like to go into it a little more today, is this concept of the cap exempt H-1B. So this is like a triple win situation for the person, the company, and America's youth. And let me explain how it works so that you can piece it together. We have a partner organization that we work with that's a nonprofit, and their mission is to expand opportunities for STEM education for underrepresented students in the United States who do not and have not historically had access to high quality STEM education, and maybe who don't have access to internships in technology companies. Here's how it works. If the person, oh, and let me just preface all these exceptions by saying, if somebody still has more years of OPT or STEM OPT left, you don't have to put them into the H-1B lottery. Excuse me, let me start over. If somebody still has time on OPT or STEM OPT, yes, you can pursue these alternative options, but the most standard thing that people would do is simply put the candidate in the lottery again next year and the year after and the year after if they still have more time. And that's the standard level of care that most employers would put into this. That being said, we have worked with companies that are highly motivated to retain certain individuals, and so they might go after multiple options in parallel, or even start a green card for somebody who's not born in from India or China before their H-1B selection happens. So all these are possible, and which ones are right for you really depends on your situation. And that's what we discuss in a consultation one-on-one if you need guidance on that. So happy to chat about that if it's helpful. Okay, so going back to this cap exempt H-1B, this is a great option for somebody who is at the end of their STEM OPT, and often people would go back to school and get another master's degree that involves CPT, so they're paying tuition and they're attending classes. But this is a way to have the person just focus on working, and it's wonderful. So I mentioned this nonprofit. The company nominates a international candidate, their H-1B beneficiary who didn't get selected. If this person has a STEM degree and it's a STEM role, they can nominate this person to the nonprofit as a global talent fellow. If the nonprofit chooses to select the individual, the nonprofit will arrange with their educational coordinator for this international individual to lead a group project on behalf of the company for a group of students in a class at a university. Then, once that's all arranged, the nonprofit will sponsor this person for, if they're in the US, it would be a change of status to H-1B. And this H-1B would be considered cap exempt because the nonprofit gets to work with an exception in the H-1B law that says that if you're a nonprofit associated with universities and research, you don't have to go through the lottery and you can get unlimited H-1Bs. So the nonprofit will get an H-1B, and when it's approved, they will employ your candidate for 5 hours a week, and the candidate's duties will be to lead a group project for students at a university that benefits your company. And this will be a great educational opportunity for students who are American, who would not otherwise have opportunity to good STEM education. And it's great for your company. We all care about diversity, and this is a wonderful way to create relationships with students who are very talented and who are learning about your company and invested in projects. And so you will increase the amount of diversity at the top of your hiring funnel when you're going to look for more candidates. So it's a triple win for everybody. And once the international person's first H-1B for the nonprofit is approved, which can be done with premium processing very rapidly, we have everything ready to go on the company side to file a second concurrent cap-exempt H-1B right away. It does not need premium processing. And as soon as it is received by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the person can start working for your company for the other 35 or 40 hours a week. And you have your person with a secured H-1B. And so this, for this program, there's an additional financial investment because the nonprofit needs to cover the cost of the legal services and the filing fees, and also they have staff to make sure that these educational programs are being fully staffed and coordinated, and that there's good teachers, because they're not going to expect your talented project manager to know how to teach students, so there's support for that. So it's a wonderful program. I hope more and more companies begin to use it, and I love the way that it gives back to our US education system as well and supports American students through immigration. So this is fabulous. If anybody needs it, happy to talk about it more. We can connect you with the nonprofit and see if they would accept your candidate as a global talent fellow, and that would be the next step here. And there's also a wide variety of other visa alternatives to consider. The H-1B is not the only fish in the sea. So there are programs for people with extraordinary ability. The O-1, it takes longer to prepare, it's more labor intensive, but you can also get a 3-year working visa for that. And people Compared to an H-1B, you know, this could allow an expert to potentially work for more than one company by listing an itinerary of services. If anybody's from Canada or Mexico, it's not as great as of a path to a green card, but they could certainly qualify for a TN professional status to be employed at your company as a professional as well, if their job category fits into one of the categories originally created by the NAFTA treaty. Now, any Australians can get an E3, also not ideal as path to a green card. Many Australians still want an H-1B, but at least they can live and work in the US. There are also wonderful programs to hire people. Researchers can come for 5 years and be employed by US private companies to conduct research. So that's one that a lot of our tech companies take advantage of. There's also internship and training programs for people for 1 to 1.5 years. Drawback of the J1 is that it's very much an exchange visitor program. So this is for people who are planning to go back home at the end of the duration of this visa. If your company is owned by individuals of certain countries, like we have some startups owned by Norwegians and people from Japan and people from New Zealand, it would be possible potentially to hire additional citizens of that same country to live and work in the US if they are employees who would be essential to the business. So think about a German car company in the United States. They could potentially bring over as many German professionals as they wanted under an E2 or E1 visa. And then last but not least, citizens of Chile and Singapore have a special visa program as well. And you'll see that we have this infographic of which path to the United States is right for me. It covers many of the most common visa and green card statuses that we see our technology client companies and employees using. So this will be provided to all of you in the follow-up email from this webinar as well. All right, so a little bit more about the O1 for extraordinary ability. This can be used in the business field. We have a lot of product managers who seem to be able to get this. Can be used for artists. So think of UX, UI designers. They could get it as well. It does require a job offer, and we do help write a lot of letters of recommendation. And for people who you want to support to become qualified for those visa types who are not qualified yet, we do have an online course that you can purchase so that your employees can enroll and then your company can support them to accumulate the right accomplishments to eventually qualify for an O1. And a side benefit is that people who have O1s are more likely to get a special green card later called an EB1. And this is very valuable for individuals born in China and India who could potentially face multi-decade long waits for green cards. So being in that EB1 category is a way for them to get more immigration security for themselves and their families and just be able to focus on their job more than immigration. So that can be a great way to support your team as well. Now, I mentioned this. This is another possibility of going straight for a green card. And we just got a question about this, which is perfect timing. So Diego, thank you so much for your question. Now, there are many types of green cards. That is not true. There are two types of green cards. You can either have full-fledged permanent residence in the United States, for which somebody gets a 10-year ID card, or if they got married to an American and they have a brand new marriage, or if they got an EB5 investor green card. Those are the situations where the government wants to root out fraud. So those people would get a 2-year green card, and if at the end of 2 years they prove that everything was honest and ethical and with integrity, then they can upgrade to the full-fledged permanent residence. So that being said, there are many paths up the mountain. And not one is better than the others. There are all just different journeys for how to reach the top of the mountain and receive a green card. There are family-based green cards, there are employment-based green cards, there are green cards through a lottery. For our purposes today, for helping people with H-1Bs through companies, these are the business categories. The EB stands for employment-based. There's 5 categories. Not all of them are relevant, so we only included the most relevant ones for our audience. But the most common ones that companies typically sponsor people for, you go through the PERM process, there's an I-140, then there's an I-485, and this would usually be in the EB2 category for people with advanced degrees or work experience, or the EB3 category for people with a bachelor's degree. So there's a lot to say here, but the example that comes to mind the most is we recently supported an Ivy League PhD graduate in a very niche specialty area at a highly funded stealth mode tech startup who knew trade secrets and had IP that was extremely crucial to the business. This person was born in a Middle Eastern country, so they were not subject to the India or China backlogs. This company went all in on sponsoring this person, and they got him, I think they put him in the H-1B lottery and sponsored him for an O1 and started like 3 types of green cards for him. So they went for the EB1A for extraordinary ability, the EB2 for the national interest waiver, and they started a PERM to get him a regular EB2 because they were just extremely highly motivated to get this guy a way to stay in the US. Taking no chances, every option possible. And to answer Diego's question, and the way this works theoretically and legally, is that the intent question, so like what visas are immigrant intent or dual intent or non-immigrant intent, it really only matters at the point at which you're applying for the visa and when you're entering the United States, coming in at the airport or the border. So here's how this plays out. Somebody is in the United States on an F1 visa. When they applied for their F1 visa, they proved to the satisfaction of the consular officer that they were going to MIT and they're just going to be a student, and they got a 5-year visa to go to school for 4 years and be able to do their OPT and get their degree. They would not get the visa if the consular officer thought that they were likely to drop out of school or not have enough money or go on welfare, or that they plan even to stay in the United States long-term and get a job. So non-immigrant intent has to be established at the beginning to get a visa. Next, every time that person comes in and out of the United States for summer vacation and spring break and attending classes, to go through Customs and Border Protection at the airport, show the passport, show the visa, show the I-20, maybe show the work permit, maybe go to secondary inspections for additional screening. To get into the country, you also have to prove that you still have non-immigrant intent and the intention to only remain in the United States short term. Now, once you're here in the United States, you need to be able to establish that when you last came in, it was true non-immigrant intent that brought you here. But if life changes, if your plans change, if you fall in love and want to get married, if you've been here for many months and now there's this incredible job offer that you want to pursue, if your company is now going to sponsor this person for a green card, life changes. People can change their minds. You're allowed to change your mind. And so the critical thing is that when you most recently entered, your intent to stay was temporary, and that you could establish that with different types of evidence that we could talk about if you ever need to, if you're ever asked. But If enough time has passed and you can establish your initial intention, it is possible to get a green card without leaving when you're here on a non-immigrant status like F1. So for this gentleman that I recently told you about, they did all of this for him at the very beginning of his OPT. He was not selected in the H-1B lottery, but it doesn't matter. He hasn't left the United States for a year and a half since before COVID. Recently, his EB-1A got approved, so we no longer need to pursue the PERM or the pending EB-2 NIW. And we're going ahead and filing his I-485 adjustment of status application right now in conjunction with his approved EB-1A. So he'll be getting a work permit soon, and he'll probably get his green card in about a year, year and a half, which is before his STEM OPT would even end. So that journey is possible. Thanks for the great question, Diego. All right. The EB-5 program is still alive. Sometimes people have resources from family or from prior employment that they wish to put into this. Sometimes crypto companies that had an initial coin offering have engaged us to get EB-5s for the founders. This is still possible. The monetary amounts for the investment did increase a couple of years ago. So now the minimum is $900,000. So it's more than it used to be. This program is really backlogged, and so it's not favored right now. Another consideration is that you're not allowed to concurrently file an I-485 adjustment of status application along with the petition, unlike a normal working visa. So you have to wait a couple years to get the petition approved and then file the adjustment of status application. So sometimes people ask about that. And all right, now here's another one that comes up. Springtime, love is in the air, the birds are singing and the flowers are blooming and everybody's falling in love. So here's another thing to talk about, just in full honesty of how the world works, right? People fall in love. And so for those individuals who want to get green cards through marriage, it is possible. For a brand new marriage that's less than 2 years old, they will get a 2-year green card, as I mentioned earlier. And we have a lot of companies that they're smaller companies, right? Like, I don't know that a giant tech company would do this, but it's a wonderful benefit to provide your team. And it's also a lot cheaper and takes a lot less time than an employment-based green card. But companies can be the payor, not the client, but they can make the investment for their employee to get a marriage-based green card through a marriage, usually to a US citizen. It's also technically possible in some cases to a permanent resident. So that is a wonderful process and good news for those folks. The Biden administration has really stepped up processing with these in the last couple months. And we even, typically an interview is mandatory, and we always send an attorney to interviews with our clients at green cards when we can. But we just got some approved this week where the people didn't even have to go to an interview because of COVID. So it's really awesome. Now, another thing that I would like to share with all of you is just what is going on with traveling and the consulates right now in COVID, because this is another layer of detail that matters if your H-1B gets approved and you're outside of the United States, or if you're outside of the United States and you want to find another visa type to come in. And it also matters if you're in the US, but there's some sort of family emergency and you're considering traveling abroad and you're wondering whether you should or not. So there's a whole bunch of groups of people who are banned from coming into the United States right now. Biden could have canceled all of it, but he didn't. He actually made the restrictions tighter on people coming in from Europe for business travel. So that's fun. But there's also a lot of types of exceptions, but the exceptions are really hard to get. So this is called a national interest exception. We can try to do it at the consulate. We can, for somebody to get a visa issued, we can try to do it through the airport directly if somebody already has a visa issued. There's still travel bans on issuing H, L, and some J types of visas in other countries. So we have to use this litigation workaround to try to get people's visa appointments scheduled. It is tricky, and the consulates, I think the biggest thing is they're still just at like 25% capacity. So it's really hard to schedule an interview right now. I just want everybody to be aware of that. But I do have a recent success story that I'm super proud of, where this guy needed to come in from Europe for an event in the entertainment industry in LA, and the consulate had said no twice, and there was less than a week left until he needed to come in, and he already had a visa. And it was an epic week a couple weeks ago that I spent, but we got letters of Congress involved. We talked about humanitarian benefits, the national interest, and we were able to get permission directly from the airport for this individual to have pre-clearance to board the airplane and fly directly from Europe to the United States. So we were able to pull it off, and it was such a fun victory to be able to help this guy. But we have other clients who have extraordinary ability. They're startup founders. They needed to go to conflict zones to take care of their families last year, and they have been stuck for months outside, unable to get visa appointments scheduled. So bottom line, unless it's really serious, please consider continuing to avoid traveling right now. Okay, here's another thing I'm excited to share with you. And if you do have questions, put them in the Q&A panel window now, please, so that I can make sure to leave enough time to answer them as I wrap up with the remaining slides. So, fun fact, we have a startup immigration program, and now with our new president, Alcorn immigration law is going to get people approved and let the world know that startup founders can come to the United States in a rule called International Entrepreneur Parole. So if you're a startup founder and you're attending this webinar because you were trying to get an H-1B to work at your startup, you should definitely know about this rule. And if you already have a funded US company where you've received venture capital or angel investor funding, you're going to want to sign up for our interest list that Edith will be sharing with everybody, because we're accepting no more than 5 highly qualified startup founders to be in our first batch of applicants by May 1st. And it's really exciting. I was actually just talking to a reporter from NBC who's going to interview some of our clients that we've already accepted in retail and the restaurant industry that are using their tech startups to create a bunch of jobs for Americans. So it's in the US national interest. The program is live. It gives you a 30-month immigration status where you can actually own at least 15% of your company, and you can have a C-suite role. And the H-1B considerations for startups, like ability to pay, an employer-employee relationship, and diluting your equity and having a board that can fire you, none of that is at play here. So it's actually really lovely and exciting. And please let us know if you're interested in doing that. So you'll be getting that information from us shortly. And then another topic I want to share is just there's a lot of immigration reform proposals in Congress right now. The biggie at the beginning of the administration was the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021. Recently, also, there was a new program for Dreamers introduced in the House, so that's very exciting. Kamala Harris was just appointed to be the leader on immigration issues for the Biden administration. So it's very exciting that they're taking this seriously. That being said, I also just want to temper everybody's expectations, saying that there are major opportunities for them to focus on improving the lives of children and refugees in the imminent, urgent future. And I believe that is where their primary focus will be in the short term. It is a Democratic administration. You know, some of the Republican arguments that I could use in the last administration for why tech immigration is good aren't as appealing to a Democratic administration that wants to focus on family reunification. So just keep that all in mind. But overall, it's getting much easier and faster and better, and it's just going to improve over the next few years. So this bill is pretty cool. It has a lot of wonderful ideas in it. They are proposing more working visas, eliminating the green card backlogs so that Indian and Chinese people can have a chance to get a green card in a reasonable amount of time, making the law less discriminatory based on country of origin, which would be wonderful. They're also proposing that anybody who gets a PhD from a US university in a STEM field should just automatically be able to self-petition for a green card without a company sponsoring them. They're such wonderful, tantalizing ideas that I really hope happen. They also want to support H-4 spouses with work permits and protect children and allow a new regional green card that geographic areas could petition for. So lots of exciting things for business immigration that people are dreaming up that I really hope come into reality in the next 4 years. That would be amazing. And also a major emphasis on keeping families together, which would be lovely, lovely, lovely for everybody, because, you know, we all have our business endeavors and our families, and these things matter to people. There would also be a path to citizenship, which would be an amazing way to support. Every now and then I work with companies in manufacturing who want to provide general education to their employees who might be from marginalized communities and might not have access to immigration knowledge and resources. So, you know, this would be a major win for those people if that happens. So my main message, just carpe diem, seize the day. Immigration does not have to limit your future. It is a tool that we can use, and where there's a will, there's a way. It might not be immediate. It might take some planning and strategy, but it's certainly possible. So I always ask people to imagine if I had a magic wand and I could either erase borders or give you a citizen of the world passport to do anything you wanted, where would you go and why? And a lot of these tools I've developed and cultivated here as strategies to support people to be able to do that. All right, now everybody, when you're going into this, just be aware that you're going to need to commit certain resources to the process to make it successful. So that includes there's always government filing fees, there's the investment for the legal services team. Your time is also a biggie. So just know that that's what you're committing to make this happen, but it is totally doable. And we are here to support you. So I do see another question, so I'll answer that. And if anybody has any more questions, please put them in the question and answer panel. And let's see, the question is, can I still use my valid B1, B2 visa, which I got many years ago, to enter if I have a pending or approved I-140? Ooh, that's a great question. I'm going to answer this question in two ways. First, let's pretend you were born in, I don't know, Kenya. And second, let's pretend you were born in India, because there's a different answer for both. If you were born in Kenya and you don't have an H-1B, and you're outside of the United States, and your I-140 is pending or approved, it would be challenging to explain and to convince the person at the border, the airport, that you're only coming in for a short-term trip on your B1, B2, because you are immediately eligible for a green card. Probably your category is current, and they would say, we think you're probably just going to file your I-485 on this trip. Why should we believe you're actually leaving? And then if you're like, oh, I'm going to leave for family stuff and do my green card at the consulate back home, fine. But then let's say they let you in and then you do change your mind and then you do file the green card, all of that can come back to haunt you at a green card interview, and they can deny your green card if they suspect that you had immigrant intent and that you committed immigration fraud and lied at the airport when you came in about it. So that's the risk if you have a green card immediately available. Now, let's say you're born in India and your priority date is not going to happen for many, many, many years, and you come in, that's a much easier situation to explain. You can't get a green card for a really long time, so it's more convincing that this is a short-term trip and that you would actually leave. Now, let's also talk about the version where you get selected in the H-1B lottery, you're outside of the US, maybe you've never had an I-140, so this is a different hypothetical that I'm creating, and you have a valid B1, B2 visa, and you come into the United States and you seek a 6-month stay past October 1st, and then your company decides that they're going to file the H-1B petition for you within this 90-day window because you got selected in the lottery. The H-1B is dual intent. The H-1B is consistent with non-immigrant intent or immigrant intent. So there's nothing to say that the company couldn't file for a change of status for you when you're here on that trip from B1 to H-1B, but you're not allowed to work at the company before the H-1B is approved. You can just come for business trips. So it's tricky, right? This is why it's good to ask these questions and talk to immigration lawyers one-on-one. If people want long-term immigration counseling, we can always set up a retainer agreement and our attorneys can be on call to answer recurring travel questions like this one. And then we have another question about the MAVNI program. And this is a really wonderful program that was used, I believe it was created under Obama. It's a military program that allows individuals who have served the United States in the Army, Navy, Marines, etc., to go for citizenship directly without even getting a green card. So this is one of those interesting exceptions. And it is a wonderful program. It was under a lot of litigation, and it was there were huge problems with it because of Trump. And I believe that there is a strong drive to bring it back, and that this is something that Biden would support. But whether that, I don't believe that that is active again yet. So if you wanted to join the military to get citizenship, and that's the only reason you want to do it, I would say hold off on enlisting until there's been a concrete announcement that it's clear to do it again. All right. So thank you so much for all of your lovely comments. It was my pleasure to answer your questions, and thanks for your feedback about the answers. And super excited to connect with you all. So you'll be getting our presentation and recording. You can listen back, and lots of links and resources to connect with us. So thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much, and be well, do good work, and keep in touch.